Hello everyone, Sir Phobos here, coming to you from Martian Law Studios in lovely Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Just coming off of Knights of Mars' recently released album, Human Instrumentality. So I thought I'd take a little bit and run through the album with you and give some commentary on it. So this album was actually the first album I ever wrote. I started writing back in the fall of 2007 and finished in the spring of 2008, and it was my sophomore year of college, and just on a total whim decided, hey, I'm gonna write an album, what the hell. So I had a couple tracks for the most part ready to go, and then basically just a whole collection of riffs that I had written, and again just decided, hey, I'm gonna make an album. And it was kind of funny, when I originally made the album, it was, all I really did was export the MIDI files from Guitar Pro, and I had a microphone that was just an 1/8 inch direct into the computer, and this piece of crap microphone was held together with duct tape and awful quality, and I had never done any vocal work before. And I was living with roommates at the time, and so I couldn't be loud. So the guitar sounded like crap, the drums sounded like crap, my voice was just awful. Not that it's really got much better, but what do you know? And so, I mean, it was just the most garbage sounding album ever, but it was still the first album I ever wrote, kind of held a special place in my heart. And so, several years later, decided to remake her. And now this first track here, The Harlequin, this was actually the first full song I ever wrote start to finish. And the funny, ironic thing about it is by far Knights of Mars' most well-composed song ever. I mean, I don't know how I pulled this song out of my ass, but it happened. I remember I actually wrote it the year before when I was living in the dorms. I had a day off, I had Guitar Pro open, and again, just on a whim decided, hey, I'm gonna write a song today. And I spent all day and much of the night basically staring at the screen, no ideas, nothing. I poured through all of my old music theory notes and studied up as much as I could, and nothing. And I don't know how it happened, but out of frustration I must have just slammed my hands on the keyboard or just started randomly typing or something, and somehow stumbled on the central chord progression of the song and just kind of ran with that. And then I remember I wrote in pen on my desk the main melody for the harp, and basically just built off that kind of steady, kind of the way I edited it, where it was, you had the steady increase and just adding instruments. And that's how I wrote basically the first half of the song, and I really liked it, but it was really short and I felt like it could have been more. So I don't know, probably a month later or so, I thought, hey, there's that Harlequin song I started, I wonder what else I could do to it. And so again, I just started typing away, not really having an idea, and this is how I stumbled on the main triplet pattern, which became the second half of the song. And again, it's just sort of instruments kind of coming and going, and yeah, it's kind of how this came to be. And I remember when I first made this for, I guess you could say, the original version of the album, I made it on my old computer, which was definitely not built for audio work. And I was working in FL Studio, one of the older versions, and my computer couldn't process it, so every time I made one little tweak or volume change or something, I would have to render the whole song, which took 10 minutes, listen to it, write down, go back, make another change. It was just a pain. But for this version of the album, I actually came across some of the best orchestra synths and choir synths and everything, and quick mixed it, and there you go. Really enjoy that song. And here we go with the next track on the album, Instrumentality.
You mean it's approved?
Of course, we have to introduce it with the very obviously Evangelion-inspired theme here, so take it away, Gendo. Now, when I originally wrote this track, I knew I wanted the album to be called Human Instrumentality because I had just watched Evangelion and blew my mind and was all obsessed with it and everything. And so of course I had to dedicate an album to it, why the hell not? When I originally started to write this, I was really big into the melodic death metal scene. I mean, I still am, but more so back then. And so the original riffs for it were really trying to be very melodic European death metal. And however, the technical nature of that was way beyond my scope and my regular influence range of industrial metal. So I had so from that original version to, I guess you could say, the final version, the only riff that stayed was this riff right here. Everything else was different, and new lyrics and everything, and this was one of the, this was one of the earlier tracks on the album I finished writing, and I mean, you could hear it, it's pretty choppy and not, I guess, extremely well composed, but it has its moments of intensity, and I like it. Now, coming back and making this new version of the album, I didn't do a ton to rewrite it. Basically, I changed the rhythm pattern in the melodic part coming up. The original rhythm pattern for that was just, well, it just wasn't good. And throughout the whole album, when I originally wrote the album, the drums were awful. I had no idea. I was way in over my head writing drums. So, write a couple albums, kind of learn drums a little bit, and come back, and they're still not great, I'm sure, but I think they serve the songs well. So, basically, the main change was I simplified the rhythm to this part, and the drums. And now, producing this song, oh my god. So, when I went back and reproduced Stigmata last year, that album to me was kind of really taking my production skills up to the next level, or I guess trying to learn how to, and like really challenge myself. And in doing so, that album Stigmata was just a pain to produce. Everything went wrong, and I didn't know how to fix it, and whatever. So I was kind of nervous coming into producing Instrumentality, and oddly enough, the whole album went pretty smoothly. I mean, came in with a pretty solid game plan, and actually it came out sounding pretty nice on the whole, and there weren't too many issues, except for this song. I could not master this song to save my life. This is as good as I could get it, so if you have an issue with it, deal with it. I pretty much just pulled the F-it card at the end of this one. It compresses pretty hard in some spots, and No, I just kind of gave up. But I think on the whole, if you're just kind of passively listening to it, it's the production value is decent. Now, getting back to what the song's about, I said I was big off Evangelion. Now, with that, and a lot of the studying I came to was how I came to my theories about what I basically stole the title of Human Instrumentality, about the nature of the unconscious and God and all that good stuff. So, and you can hear that in the Serial Experiments in this album and in Universal Shattering. So that's what the lyrics for this song are supposed to be about, not Evangelion, but it's the way it went. Oh, good old clowns. This is one of my more favorite Knights of Mars songs. Basically, I had a friend tell me back in the day that she was deathly frightened by clowns. So, I mean, you just have to write a song about it at that point. So here you go. Here's a song about killer clowns. Because why not? And so when I was, I guess you could say, studying up on killer clowns, I watched a good documentary movie on John Wayne Gacy, and the song's supposed to be about killer clowns in general, but the first two verses are basically just about John Wayne Gacy. Except for only some of the drum patterns, the song pretty well stayed true to the original version. I think I changed up the rhythm on the guitar parts a little bit, but not enough to make a noticeable difference. More or less just easier for me to play, but... Oh, and I'll show you something cool right here. When I was writing this song, I was still a very, very novice music writer, and this is where I ran out of ideas for the song. So, just had to fill it with sound clips to add length, basically. And of course, this is from Stephen King's It, and this is from The Devil's Rejects right here. Very appropriate sound clips, if you ask me. But again, these are in here purely because of lazy or unintelligent songwriting. It just happens. I think it still is fun, though. Production on this song was actually very smooth from start to finish. This was one of the songs that I would balance all the other tracks on the album against, because every time I made a change to all the tracks on the album, this one just kind of sounded better. So I would kind of use this as the gold standard. And the tough thing about producing this song, though, were the vocals and the verses. Just I didn't record them very well, just how I had it set up. And it was kind of a challenge to get the compression and everything right, but came through in the end. Oh, another big change from the original album is right here, or just before that. I left out a couple measures when I was comping the drums. I don't know why, they just didn't make it in. Bit of an oversight, but the song still works. Really enjoy it. Boogiepop. Outside of Evangelion, if you've listened to the whole album, you could probably assume, and would be correct in your assumption, that when I was writing the album, I was way into Boogiepop Phantom. Those 12 or 13 or however many episodes there are of that show really clicked with me, and I really got into it. So there are references throughout the album, none bigger than the song. Now, when I was writing the album, I had recently been introduced into Maximum the Hormone, who are now one of my favorite bands. And, I mean, you can't not like Maximum. So, I had to put a Maximum-esque sounding song on the album, and this is what came out. Really, the only thing that changed for this track from the original version of the album was just the drums. Because, again, like the rest of the album, the original drums were total garbage. And now these are serviceable. Production on this song was up and down. For a while it would be really smooth, it was sounding good. You know, every change I made to it really enhanced it. And then I would do something and it would all fall apart. Then I'd be frustrated for a little bit, but then things would be going well again, and it was kind of a back and forth thing, but again, really like how the song turned out. Listening to some just lovely vocals right here. Yeah, there's really not a lot to talk about this. On the original album, I didn't really care for the song that much. It was kind of sloppily wrote together, or quickly rushed. But now after the, I guess, reproduced version of it, I actually really like the song. I think it is one of the stronger ones on the album. Trying to deal with the slap bass here was kind of a mess, but I love how the guitars sound in this song. They're just so aggressive and dirty. Just pure, gritty, dirty. I mean, I had for the whole album, I had pretty well came into it with the intention of having just really dirty, gritty sounding guitars. And I think that element of it really shines most in this track. It gives it more of a, I don't know if I want to say garage band kind of a feel to it, but it was cleanly produced, but it still kind of just kicks your ass a little bit. So again, there's not a whole lot about this song, but gotta love it. Oh, here we go. Now this is dipping back into my childhood here. Probably not the best way to lead this, but when I was, oh boy, 10, 11, 12 years old, I can't remember now. Basically, back when The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time first came out, didn't think that would be referenced here, did you? Oh, I mean, that was my childhood. I love that game. And little 6th grade me was in the Kakariko graveyard in the game, talking to Dampé the Gravekeeper when you can go on the one side quest called Dampé the Gravekeeper's Heartpounding Grave Digging Tour. And little 6th grade me was thinking, oh boy, that'd be so cool to be in a band someday and have a song called Heartpounding Gravedigger and go on the Heartpounding Grave Digging Tour. So, flash forward a few years, and when I was writing the album, I mean, I still had that just odd, embarrassing childhood thought, and followed through on it to an extent. Still haven't gone on the Heart-Pounding Grave Digging Tour yet, you know, don't know what the future holds, but that's what this song's about, just a shout out to my childhood. The lyrics are pure nonsense. except for the first verse, I had an idea for a horror story. Or not the first verse, the last verse, actually. I had an idea for a horror story, movie, or something, whatever, and it's just kind of a little bit of a shout out to that. And then, like, these lyrics here are paraphrasing some things Dante says in the game. But, yeah, when I was writing the album, you know, my industrial metal part of me was kind of talking to me and decided to write a horror sounding song and kind of came through with it. Again, like on Boogiepop, the only thing that really changed for the song were the drums, and really I didn't even change those that much. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward kind of chugging song, so not a lot you really can do to it. But as you can hear, the way the song's broken up into different segments, that was purely because of my songwriting skills at the time. It just kind of got to be fragmented because I wanted to have different scary parts in it, I guess. I don't know. Production on the song was fine. This was one of those songs that didn't really have to worry about too much, didn't really get frustrated over, just kind of went with the flow. Oh, and for the kick drum here, the heartbeat in the beginning and at the end here, there was an effect I could do on my old bass that sounded just like a heartbeat, but I sold it, so didn't have that bass anymore, so I had to stick with that. Now, Serial Experiment Human. This is where my crazy-ass philosophies first come out. Again, this album was written before Universal Shattering, so the serial experiments on Universal Shattering are a follow-up to this.
Consciousness is our waking self, where we have control of our actions.
I ended up rewriting the transcript for this because, you know, it'd been a few years later, I had done a lot more research, and
the unconscious mind gives us impulses,
just made it a little more, kind of explained it a little bit better, I guess. I didn't realize so much on the listener's assumptions.
In short, the unconscious is our soul. Now, have you ever had a dream that showed
and I really didn't change much to the song. I added a different synth for the kind of percussion rhythm part of it, but that was about it. I really didn't even have to mix it that much. I probably should have, but yeah, this was the first, this and Serial Experiment time were the first tracks I finished for the new version of the album.
Could we call the universal unconscious God?
And yeah, that's about it for that. This song is a joke. Literally, it's a joke. All you need to do is hop on YouTube, type up Full Moon, Eternal Snow, and you'll see why. I had watched the anime Full Moon no Sagashite, and which, if you haven't seen it, it's a good show. This is one of the feature songs in the show, and it's a very, I guess, girly J-pop song. I mean, about as stereotypical as you can get. I mean, you just have to write an English rock cover of it. You know, that was my thought process. So, it was kind of funny when I was recording the vocals for it. I was actually trying, really trying to do a good job with it, but thankfully, for this track, I have a terrible singing voice. So, I think that just adds to the comedic element of the song. It, yeah. Writing this song back in the day was an extreme challenge because there were no tabs for it. There was nothing I could go off of. I found sheet music for the main rhythm for the piano, so off of that, and just learning it by ear, which is I can't do. When it comes to tuning and playing things by ear, I just am not blessed with that gift. So writing this track was very, very challenging. I don't know how I did it, but it actually works pretty well. Except when I was recording this, I had the drums comped, I had the guitar and bass recorded, and I did just a rough mix. Just something so I could listen to and practice the vocals over. Now, I found an a cappella version of the original Japanese song, and I wanted to layer that on top of my rough mix, just so I could kind of practice the melodies to it. And well, I found out a neat little something that when I wrote the song, I completely neglected to include a few measures, like on either side of each chorus. So the a cappella version wouldn't line up with my rough mix, and I was too deep into production to go back and basically rewrite it. And so I, again, just kind of pulled the epic card and went with this. So this is my version. Sans several measures and essential parts to it. I also realized I left out some guitar melody parts in the verses that should follow the synthesizer of the original Japanese track, but I was really mad at myself when I found that out when I was producing this. I was like, how could I have just oversought that, or overlooked that whatever. But kind of like on Boogiepop, this song was really up and down for production, but more extreme. There were times throughout the production cycle where I almost use this as kind of the gold standard to judge the other tracks against and figure out different techniques and stuff. And then there were times where this was just a mess. I mean, I struggled with the compression on it, getting the bow-coated vocals in there, and a lot of the drums were especially difficult to produce on this. I don't know why. They should have been the same for the whole album, but in the end, I guess it came through, but I definitely kind of struggled my way through it. But like I said, there were those moments where things actually went very, very well, and so I never was like ripping my hair out or anything. And actually, when I went into recording to record the song, the guitars, I had never practiced this song since I originally wrote it, never even really looked at it. So I had like a week to learn the song, and thankfully it's not that hard to play, but got through it. On to The Alchemist. I kind of started writing this song, back in, I want to say like my sophomore year of high school. It was like sophomore, junior year of high school. Alright, I had like this part done, and that was the only part done. The origin of the song was, back in them days, was when Full Metal Alchemist first started airing in the US. So my friends and I were pretty big into that show. And after that, I actually started studying alchemy a little bit, like real alchemy. And I don't know, about a month or two into reading into that stuff, it just kind of dawned on me, like, there's a reason this science died. Like, this is dumb. So that's kind of what this track's about, is why would you spend your time on alchemy, I guess? You know, there's better things to do in the world. But I had, like I said, I had the main bass and guitar part written back in those high school days, and so when I went to go write the original version of the album, I needed some more songs for it, because I only had like 8 or so songs off the bat. And I remembered I had started this, years before, and kind of dusted it off and finished it up. And when I originally wrote it, I really didn't care for this song that much. It was just kind of on the album to be on the album. And but after producing it for the newer version, I actually really like the song. I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It's a good kind of chill out sort of song, I suppose. And the only thing that changed for this from the original were the drums. And thankfully, Sir Phobos was so kind to write the drums for this track, and his wonderful guitar solo right here. Yeah, he rewrote the new drums for that, so that's why those are quite a bit more technical. And that guitar solo before then, back when I originally finished writing the album in the spring of 2008, Sir Phobos and he actually recorded it back then, despite the rest of the album being MIDI files. And after listening to the album for so many years, or whatever, and because of the nature of it's a great solo, I just fell in love with that guitar solo, so didn't even need to record another one. I just copied and pasted the WAV file and polished it up a little bit. But production on this song was fine. Never really had a problem, because the nice thing about this was the bass has a more prominent role with some higher tones, so I didn't really have to worry too much about low end compression as much as the rest of the album. So the song went fine. Lionheart. If you haven't figured it out by right now, listening to this song is in fact about the main character, Squall Lionheart, from Final Fantasy VIII, which is my personal favorite of the Final Fantasies. And each verse kind of goes through, a different part of Squall's life in the show, in the game. I actually started writing this song, I want to say when I was in junior high, even. Maybe not that early, but it was before I started writing The Alchemist. But back in those days, that's when I was going through my obligatory Metallica phase, like everyone goes through. So I had way more lyrics, and it was going to be this big Metallica-esque epic. And when I went to go write this album, I really liked the lyrics I wrote for it, so I wanted to write a song based off that, but it just wasn't gonna happen, I guess. However, at that time, I was going through a big gacked phase, lucky me, and kind of converted it, you know, chopped out like half the lyrics for the song and made it more of a gack style song, I guess. And I don't know where I pulled this riff out of, but I don't know, this is probably one of my more favorite Knights of Mars riffs. Actually, this song from the original version remained largely unchanged. I think the only thing I did change was the drums for the chorus parts, and that's about it. Because at the time of writing the album, I had the drums for the kind of main riff, and I remember just kind of marveling at those back in those days, like, wow, how did I write that? Those drums sound awesome. You know, looking back now, it's a decent drum pattern, but I still just really like it. I love when that hi-hat hits on that open note right here. Production on this song was pretty fine. Nothing really frustrating. Everything went pretty smoothly. Had a few issues toward the end, but nothing that didn't work out. This last part right here, I guess if you don't know, these are the final words of Ultimisia after you beat her in Final Fantasy VIII. Spoilers if you haven't gotten that far in the game. Black Joker. This is not only my favorite song off this album, it is one of, if not my favorite Knights of Mars song, and this is one of my favorite songs just in general. This intro part here is the clip from the 1989 movie Batman. There were different parts of the sound clip that I wanted in there, and I couldn't decide on which one, so I decided to screw it up with the whole thing in. I remember this was one of the later songs I wrote for the album. It was getting towards the end of writing the album, and I remember I was walking back to class one day, and I had an encounter with a person to remain unnamed, and it just pissed me off so much. So I stormed back to my apartment and immediately started writing this. The first half of the first verse is irrelevant. It was supposed to be about a movie, some B-side horror. And the rest of it is just violently depressive. Yeah, I was extremely pissed off when I wrote this song, as you can hear. And this is definitely, this and Mechanical Revolution off of Universal Shattering are definitely the most aggressive Knights of Mars songs, and I love it. Writing this song, again, was just a breeze. I just plowed through it. I was just kind of in the phase, in the zone. And, I remember when I originally recorded the vocals for it, I really wanted to capture the anger and emotion out of it. So, I remember I brought my laptop and my shitty little microphone out to my car in the parking lot, and that's where I recorded the vocals. They still sounded like garbage, but this part right here, I spent a good amount of time like trying to write this kind of jam guitar solo thing for it, and I actually had some pretty cool stuff written, but it just didn't work. And so I decided instead of a guitar solo, how about I put in like an emotional, psychological solo? And lo and behold, there's this perfect monologue from Boogiepop Phantom that just fit this so perfectly, and had to put it in there. Producing this song actually went very well for the most part. This was the song I probably spent the most time on and wanted to be the most, I guess, delicate with. Because, again, this song really does mean a lot to me, and I very, very, very much enjoy the song. So, really wanted to be very detailed with it. If I ever do play shows live someday, this definitely will be the closer for it. And here we have this little thing here that sums up the whole song.
I think I read about it in a book somewhere.
And that's it. Serial experiment time, kind of part 2 of the theories I have and all that good stuff. The radio bits at the beginning of these serial experiments on this album, all I really did was hold my microphone up to my clock radio and just scan through the channels. And I scanned around my favorite radio station here where I live. And the bits you can hear of speaking on the radio are just kind of a shout out to my favorite radio show, the Common Man program on 100.3 Da Fan.
More on this later. Within time, each second that goes by
that little bit there, more on this later, that was
memory. Without time, there is
kind of a foreshadowing or a reference to universal shattering.
Pure perfection has no past.
Some issues get picked up. Again, that little quote there at the end was from Boogiepop Phantom, because everything on this album is. And last but not least is Vector. This was, outside of the Harlequin, this was the first track I had finished for the album. This was the first track, with like guitars and drums and bass and all that. As you can hear from its extremely simple nature. Of course, this song is about Elfin Lead. If you haven't seen that show, good luck to you. This is about the very infamous puppy scene. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. These are actually some of my favorite lyrics I've ever written. I actually submitted them to a poetry contest or a tournament kind of thing, and I didn't win it, but got pretty far in it. Just kind of simple structure and ran with it. You'll hear the orchestral parts in this coming up after this verse. I actually wrote that. That was kind of, I'd mentioned in the beginning that I sort of have this like collection of half-written riffs or partially written songs. It's kind of a junkyard of music, basically. And the orchestral parts, it was originally in like an organ harmonizing part, and that's all there was for that song, and I didn't know what else to do with it, so basically just slapped it on changed it over from an organ to a choir and strings, and that's how this got here. Yeah, like I said, this was the first song for the album, and pretty simple composition to it. Producing the song was a breeze. I mean, just because of the simple nature of the composition. Really didn't have to struggle with anything with this. Just kind of get the mixing right, and that was about it.
I don't laugh and never cry. Never saw the ways trust went. Now cry and start begging. Sacrificing the innocent. Suffering, torture, and torment. Pulling harder against my nerve. Vectors raping at your skin.
I really like this song as the closer on the album. It's kind of the more, a little bit longer song. I guess you could say a little more epic. I don't know. So, and that's a pattern I've tried to follow with the subsequent albums. Like on Stigmata, there's Beauty and the Beast to close it out. A little bit longer, a little more engaging song. Same with Universal Shattering, you have Heart of Light at the end of it. Here's a sound clip from Elfin Lied that, again, if you've seen the show, you're probably as equally effed up as I am. In the original version of the album, the sound clip cut out right when the guitars kick in. But I let it go a little bit because, it's got that lovely sounding blood splatter you gotta leave in there. This part was kind of a pain to mix and produce, but I had to kind of jockey it around a bunch, but came together in the end. But, like I said, on the whole, this album was actually a joy to produce. For the most part, things went pretty well and didn't struggle too much. And I'm not gonna wait the whole length, but at the end there's the sound clip from Neon Genesis Evangelion at the very end of the show where everyone's congratulating each other. That was supposed to be for the album, this weird instrumentality theme that never really came through for the album, but it's more or less there to congratulate you for listening to the whole album. Good job, you did it. Yeah, this, like I said, this album really does hold a special spot in my heart. It was kind of my firstborn, and again, it was really fun to produce. So, definitely learned some new tricks, and we'll be putting those in play for the future. Alright, this is Sir Phobos signing off. Thanks for listening.